Joining me on 12 Minutes with is Sweden's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Maria Malmer Stenergard. She is here in Brussels for the Foreign Affairs Council, which will focus largely on Ukraine. Her country continues to be one of Ukraine's main allies, contributing over 12 billion euros to Kyiv since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. Welcome, Minister, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The ongoing war in Ukraine and the support for the country are at the heart of today's meeting in Brussels. Now, last week, Hungary threw a spanner in the works for the EU's planned 90 billion euros loan for Kyiv, blocking it until the transit of Russian oil resumes. What is your reaction to this move?
Of course, I'm very frustrated with this, and it's not logical because it was Russia that bombed this pipeline. So I think that their frustration should be directed towards the Kremlin and not towards Ukraine or the EU. We need to increase the support for Ukraine. And like I said, I'm very frustrated to see that over and over again, Hungary is blocking the support that is so much needed.
And what do you think about the timing of Hungary's move?
Well, the timing for stopping support for Ukraine is always bad because they need every single piece of support that they can have. We just announced our 21st support package last week with around 1.2 billion euros concentrating on air defense. I believe that more countries should come up with bilateral support if they really mean what they say, which almost all countries do, that this is a fight that is not only for Ukraine but also for our common freedom and future.
Minister, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky warned of dire financial consequences if the loan does not receive support. Now, member states have used some creative workarounds to Hungarian vetoes in the past. Do you think this is the case nowadays? Can something be done to work around it?
We must remember that the decision was already made. So, of course, Hungary should stick to that decision, and it's illoyal of them not to do so. We need to make sure that Ukraine gets that money. It's around 2/3 of their budgetary needs that will be covered through that loan for 2 years, and they really need that money. So we have to find a way of making this happen. But I'm very frustrated. And you asked about the timing. I think that is no coincidence that elections are coming up in Hungary.
Hungary is not alone in this. Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico also said he will cut off emergency electricity supplies to Kyiv until Ukraine restores Russia's oil supplies to the country. Now, what do you make of that? And again, the timing, which coincides with Hungarian statement.
It's Russia that is the perpetrator. It's Russia that should be harmed in all of this, and not Ukraine. So I'm deeply frustrated, and it's so unloyal to behave like this. And I expect the rest of the European Union to put more pressure on these two countries that are behaving in this way.
Minister, Ukraine is facing particularly depressing milestone this week. 24th of February marks 4 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So the country is entering indeed the 5th year. And the attacks by Russia continue with intensified campaign specifically against civilian energy infrastructure. The U.S. diplomatic talks are ongoing, but there is no significant outcome at this stage. How do you see these talks progressing?
Well, first of all, I'm grateful for all the efforts that are made to reach a peace. I don't see any true willingness from the Russian side to actually engage in real peace talks. And that is why we need to change the calculus. And we see that Russia is already suffering. The economy is hurting so bad. And they have lost more than 1 million lives. They've lost allies, they've lost influence, but we still need to increase the pressure on Russia in order to change this calculus.
Well, but the economy is suffering for 4 years now for Russia, and the losses in the troops. These doesn't seem to be enough for Russia to engage in a more serious commitment. So exactly. Moscow, as of now, stands as if they are ready to continue.
They are ready to continue because they are ready to suffer, but they do suffer, and we have to make sure that they suffer even more, meaning we have to increase the pressure even more on Russia. I showed at the end of last year that we have actually bought energy from Russia to an amount that exceeds our total support at the time. That is so frustrating to see that we have still been feeding their war economy at the same time as we have been trying to support Ukraine. And those numbers should be completely different. So we need to stop all import of Russian energy. And that is what Hungary and Slovakia should have done a long time ago. But we need to move forward with other actions as well, such as stopping the imports of fertilizers and continue to work on sanctions against the shadow fleets.
Your country is among the countries that invested much more finances and resources into supporting Ukraine compared to so many other EU countries. How does that make you feel regarding the burden sharing?
Well, several times I pointed to the fact that the Nordics are doing a lot in order to support Ukraine. But by pointing to that, I don't mean that we should do less. I mean that others could do so much more. So, for instance, the Nordic countries last year in 2025 contributed 1/3 of all military support by NATO countries to Ukraine. And I mean, we have around 30 million people and the NATO has 1 billion. So it says a lot about, yes, what the Nordics do, but also so much about what others could do. And yes, I am frustrated because when we say that the Ukrainians are fighting not only for their freedom, but also for ours, we pay accordingly. But it's up to others to live up to those fine words.
Minister, the EU leaders are now waiting fast-tracking Ukraine accession to the European Union before some of the technical accession requirements. Now, the date that we have been hearing around is as early as 2027. Are you in favor of this approach, of this fast-track approach?
We are the first ones to say that Ukraine belongs in the European family, and we are doing everything we can to help them reach their goal of EU membership. At the same time, it's important that they live up to their requirements. We also have several other member states waiting to become members and waiting for different reasons. And we need to find a way to treat them all fairly. But yes, we think it's such an asset that so many countries are now knocking on the European door, wanting to become a part of our family and not leaning towards the East.
Minister, let's pivot to the EU-US relations here. The Supreme Court ruling that we've heard about Trump's tariffs and his decision to impose new global tariffs of 15%. Now, in response, the European Parliament's trade chief proposed freezing ratification of the trade deal made with Washington last summer until there is some greater clarity. Do you agree with the argument? What's your take on this?
First of all, tariffs are harmful to businesses and to consumers. I don't want tariffs at all, basically. And secondly, I think you should honor agreements that were made. Now, we have a problem on the US side because obviously the Supreme Court had its ruling, and now we see how the US is behaving in an unpredictable way that is always harmful to the market. And we want them to make clear what is now going to happen. And then I expect the European Union to act in a way that takes us away from a trade war and to more prosperity in general.
Another thing on the United States, another key topic for Europe in the recent days has been Donald Trump's Board of Peace. Now, your country was offered a place but will not participate. The EU foreign ministers are going to question the Commission Vice President Dubravka Šuica about her participation at the launch. Are you critical about her visit to the inauguration?
Well, first of all, it's very important that we move forward with the phase 2 of the peace plan for Gaza. And we had this resolution adopted in the UN that also defined the border of peace. Now what we got was something completely different. So we support the peace process, but we do not support an alternative to the UN that the border of peace is more or less becoming. We need to reform the UN. We don't need a new UN. That is why we have not participated.
Finally, another important topic, Iran. Last week you urged citizens to leave Iran amid the growing risks of escalation in Iran and in the region. Do you believe the US attack on the country is imminent?
Well, I wouldn't want to speculate about this. It's my responsibility to protect the Swedish citizens that are there, that shouldn't actually be there because we have asked them to leave for many years. But I don't know what is going to happen. I urge all parties to de-escalate, get back to diplomatic talks. I think that's the only way to solve things long term.
Should the situation there escalate, and we've seen signs of it over the past couple of days as well, with increased US military presence, are you concerned about how it's going to impact also the region when it comes to the Middle East?
Oh yes, we've seen during the 12-day war how it also affected the whole region, and that people in general, of course, are affected, and this could be a very dangerous development, and that is why we also urge all parties to de-escalate. But of course, Iran cannot be allowed to develop nuclear weapons, so this is not an easy situation at all.
First and foremost for Iran, for Iranians.
For Iranians who have been suffering so badly, and we've seen these horrible attacks on civilians, and we need to support the Iranian people in their fight for their freedoms. But we also need to make sure that people don't suffer and that we don't escalate the situation in the region that is already so tense.
Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.